On the 5th of December, 1872, the ship drifts alone in the Atlantic. Her sails are set. Her cargo is intact. Her lifeboat is gone, and so is everyone aboard. No bodies. No sign of struggle. No note. This is the Mary Celeste. And what happened on her deck remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in maritime history. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste left New York Harbor, bound for Genoa, Italy. At the helm was Captain Benjamin Briggs, a respected, experienced sailor with a spotless record. This wasn't his first Atlantic crossing. It wasn't even close. Briggs wasn't alone. He brought his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, along for the voyage, a decision that tells us something important. This was not a man who expected danger. A captain doesn't bring his toddler onto a ship he fears won't make it home. The crew numbered 7 more, experienced sailors, handpicked, with no history of trouble. The cargo hold carried 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, bound for fortifying Italian wine. 10 people. 1 ship. A routine transatlantic crossing. They were never seen alive again. 8 days later, on November 15, another ship, the Dei Gratia, left New York on a similar route to Gibraltar. Her captain, David Morehouse, knew Briggs personally. The 2 men had dined together before their respective departures. On December 5, nearly a month into the voyage, the crew of the Dei Gratia spotted a ship adrift, roughly 400 miles east of the Azores. Her sails were partially set, but her movement was erratic, drifting rather than sailing. Something was wrong. Morehouse sent a boarding party across. What they found has haunted historians for over 150 years. The Mary Celeste was empty. Not a single soul remained on board. But this wasn't a ghost ship, in the way fiction likes to imagine it. This was a ship that looked like it had been left in the middle of an ordinary day. The cargo, 1,701 barrels of alcohol, was still there. 9 barrels had been opened, but the rest sat undisturbed. 6 months of food and water remained stocked. The crew's personal belongings, including money and valuables, were untouched in their quarters. Even Sarah Briggs's sewing machine sat undisturbed, with a piece of clothing still resting on it, as if she'd simply stepped away. There was no sign of violence. No blood. No damage suggesting an attack. The ship's log had last been updated 9 days earlier, on November 25, placing the Mary Celeste near Santa Maria Island in the Azores at the time the crew vanished. That means the ship had continued sailing, essentially on autopilot, for over a week with no one aboard to guide her. 1 lifeboat was missing. The ship's main pump was disassembled, and a length of rope was found trailing behind the vessel in the water. 10 people had disappeared into the Atlantic, leaving behind a ship in near-perfect order. The Dei Gratia crew sailed the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar, where British maritime authorities opened a formal inquiry. And almost immediately, the case took on a darker shade, not because of new evidence, but because of suspicion. The Attorney General of Gibraltar, Frederick Soliflood, became convinced this wasn't an accident. He suspected foul play, possibly mutiny, possibly a plot by Morehouse and the Dei Gratia's crew to claim salvage rights on an abandoned ship. He accused the crew of murder, insinuated an insurance conspiracy, and delayed the case for months. But the accusations fell apart under scrutiny. There was no evidence linking Morehouse's crew to any wrongdoing. No financial trail suggesting fraud. In the end, Morehouse and his men received a fraction of the ship's value in salvage, a payout deliberately reduced, many historians believe, simply because Soliflood couldn't prove his theory but couldn't let go of his suspicion either. The formal inquiry closed without ever determining what actually happened to the 10 people aboard the Mary Celeste. They were never found. Not their bodies. Not the missing lifeboat. Nothing. With no bodies and no confession, theories have filled the vacuum for a century and a half. A few have real evidentiary weight. Most don't survive contact with the facts. Piracy was an early suspicion, but pirates don't leave cargo and valuables behind. Whoever left the Mary Celeste left with almost nothing of value. That alone eliminates most theft-based explanations. Mutiny was Solar Flood's favored theory, but there was no sign of struggle, no damage to the ship, and nothing to suggest the disciplined, experienced crew had turned on their captain. Sea monsters and supernatural forces entered the story decades later, largely thanks to a fictionalized account written by a young Arthur Conan Doyle in 1884, which many readers mistook for fact. This is where the ghost ship reputation actually comes from, not from evidence, but from a short story. The theory with the strongest scientific backing involves the cargo itself. The Mary Celeste was carrying denatured alcohol, industrial grade, highly volatile. Some of the barrels, later found empty, may have leaked fumes into the hold. If those fumes built up, and something triggered a visible vapor cloud or a minor explosion, not enough to damage the ship, but enough to terrify the crew, Captain Briggs may have made a fatal, split-second decision: get everyone off the ship immediately, into the lifeboat, tied to the Mary Celeste by that length of rope found trailing in the water. If that rope snapped in rough seas, and the winds that week were known to be unpredictable, 10 people would have been left stranded in a small lifeboat in the open Atlantic, watching their ship sail away without them. No rescue would come. No wreckage would ever be conclusively identified as theirs. It's not a certainty. It's a theory. But it's the one most consistent with what investigators actually found: an intact ship, a missing lifeboat, trailing rope, and just enough opened alcohol barrels to suggest something happened in that cargo hold. To this day, no trace of Captain Briggs, his family, or his crew has ever been found. No bodies. No lifeboat. No confirmed wreckage. The Mary Celeste herself was eventually repaired, sold, and returned to service, carrying a reputation few ships ever shake. She sailed for another, until she was deliberately wrecked off Haiti in 1885, as part of an insurance fraud scheme, one final, almost fitting act of deception, in a story already defined by unanswered questions. More than 150 years later, the Mary Celeste remains what she was the moment the Dei Gracia's crew stepped onto her empty deck. A ship that kept sailing long after everyone aboard her was gone. And a mystery the ocean has never given back.